There is a feeling you have carried for a long time. You may not have a name for it. Most people don't. It is not depression. It is not loneliness. It is something quieter and somehow heavier than both. It is the feeling of being almost full, almost there. Almost enough. You have built things. You have loved people. You have survived losses that should have broken you and didn't. And still underneath all of it, something whispers that you are missing, something you cannot name. Here is what I want to tell you today, before anything else. That feeling is not a wound. It is not evidence that something went wrong with you. That feeling is a signal, an ancient one, and it has a name that is 2,000 years old. Jesus Canero Italiano, the Gnostics who carried his deepest teachings, knew it, and they encoded the answer in a single word that most of the world has never heard pronounced correctly. That word is Pleroma, and by the time this teaching ends, you will understand, not just intellectually, but somewhere in your body, why you were never actually empty, and what it means to finally live from that truth. To understand Pleroma, you first need to understand what it is not. It is not happiness. It is not the absence of pain. It is not the feeling you get when everything in your life is finally working the way you planned. Pleroma is the Greek word the early Gnostic Christians used to describe the ultimate nature of divine reality. It means fullness, but not fullness as in satisfaction after a meal. Fullness as in the state of being that has no edge, no lack, no opposite. The Gnostics did not invent this concept. They received it, and the man who transmitted it most powerfully, whose every word, every miracle, every confrontation with the religious authorities of his time was a living demonstration of Pleroma, was Jesus of Nazareth. But here is where it gets important. The word Pleroma appears in the Gospel of John in a line so dense with meaning that most translations flatten it into something almost unrecognizable. John 1:16, "From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace." The word translated as fullness there, that is, Pleroma. And what John was saying, what he was actually structurally saying in the original Greek, is that Jesus did not give from abundance. He gave from a state of being that was itself the source. Not a man who had a lot, a man who was at the level of consciousness, beyond the very concept of not having. The root concept behind Pleroma traces back through Greek into the Aramaic and Hebrew traditions that shaped Jesus, specifically to the word shalom. The root of shalom, which does not mean peace in the passive sense. SHLEM means wholeness, integrity, the state of something that is complete in itself, lacking nothing, needing nothing added to it. When Jesus moved through the world, when he healed, when he multiplied, when he spoke to storms and the storms obeyed, he was not reaching outside himself for power. He was operating from shalom, from Pleroma, from a place that the world's conditions could not touch. That place is not reserved for him. It never was. There is a story inside the Gnostic texts, one that never made it into the canonical Gospels, that describes the nature of the cosmos as a kind of forgetting. In the beginning, according to this tradition, all of reality existed within the Pleroma, the divine fullness. Everything that is, was, and will be held inside a single, undivided wholeness. And then something happened. Not a fall from grace, in the moral sense. Something more like a dream within a dream, a dimension of reality in which the fragments of the Pleroma forgot what they were. The Gnostics called this dimension the place of emptiness, the place of forgetting. And they said this, which is the part that changes everything. We are not in the Pleroma because we sinned. We are not being punished. We are fragments of the Pleroma that have temporarily forgotten their origin. Jesus in the Gnostic reading did not come to satisfy a legal requirement of divine justice. He came as a messenger, a reminder, someone who had not forgotten, or who had remembered so completely that the forgetting had no hold on him anymore. Every miracle was a demonstration of what happens when a human being operates from Pleroma instead of The blind man receives sight, not because Jesus added something that wasn't there, but because in the field of Pleroma, blindness has no ultimate reality. The lack dissolves in contact with the fullness. The 5,000 are fed not because food was created from nothing, but because in the state of Pleroma, scarcity is a condition of the Kenoma. That the fullness simply overrides. This is not theology, this is a map. A map of consciousness, a map of what becomes possible when you stop operating from the belief that you are a fragment and begin living from the truth that you are and always were. Part of the fullness. The question is not how to get to the Pleroma. The question is how to remember that you never left. The words of Jesus in Aramaic open different pathways back to divine alignment. Each one represents a frequency capable of restoring something fragmented in human consciousness. Understanding these frequencies is the first step, but mastering their vibration in your daily life is where the true miracle happens. Aramaic words carry a sound dimension that is deeply vibrational, and some of these pronunciations may reach your ears slightly differently depending on how they are rendered. To help you embody each frequency with precision, I created a collection of 5 sacred study guides, each one dedicated to a specific Aramaic declaration and its practice. Inside, you'll find the correct pronunciation, guided meditations, and daily activation rituals. The link is pinned in the comments. Your deeper transformation begins there. I want to talk about how the forgetting happens, because understanding the mechanism of the Kenoma is the first step toward dissolving it. It does not happen all at once. It never does. It happens in layers. Over years. Through accumulation. A child is born with no concept of nothing. Watch a young child, before language, before comparison, before the world begins its long work of measuring and evaluating, and you will see something close to Pleroma. In its natural form, pure presence, pure aliveness, no gap between the self and the moment. And then, slowly, consistently, with the best intentions, the world begins to install the Kenoma. You are too much. You are not enough. People like us don't have things like that. Be realistic. Be careful. Don't want too much, or you'll be disappointed. For those of us who are now past 40, past 50, we have been receiving these transmissions for decades. And what happens over decades is not just belief. It becomes biology. It becomes the default frequency of the nervous system. The body learns to operate from scarcity, the same way it learns to operate a car automatically, without conscious thought, without even noticing it is happening. The Gnostic teachers called the forces that maintain this forgetting are not demons in the literal sense, but patterns, architectures of consciousness that keep the fragment convinced it is only a fragment and that the Pleroma is somewhere else, available to someone else, requiring something you don't yet have before it can be accessed. The archon of too late. The archon of I have tried this before and a thing changed. You know these voices, you have lived with them long enough to have given them the authority of facts. They are not facts. They are kinema. Speaking in the language of reason. Jesus faced them too. The 40 days in the desert, that was not a retreat. That was a direct confrontation with the architecture of forgetting. And he came back, not because he defeated them by force, but because he remembered something that made them irrelevant. He remembered Pleroma. If something in you is shifting as you receive this teaching, trust that movement. It is your original nature recognizing itself. The 5 sacred study guides were designed to walk beside you as that remembrance deepens, layer by layer, word by word, frequency by frequency. Each guide carries the full context of these sacred declarations, their sound, their meaning, and their power to dissolve what no longer belongs to you. The link is pinned in the comments. Your return to wholeness has a next step. Let me show you how Jesus actually lived from Pleroma. Not as theology, as observable behavior. The night before his death, the night of the Last Supper, Jesus knew what was coming. He knew Judas would betray him. He knew Peter would deny him. He knew the disciples would scatter. He knew the full weight of what the next 18 hours would contain. And what did he do? He took bread. He gave thanks. He broke it and shared it. The word for gave thanks in the Greek is eucharistio, from the same root as charischaris. But in the Aramaic tradition behind it, the act of giving thanks before receiving, before the meal was even eaten, before the morning came, before any of the horror had resolved, was a specific act of consciousness. It was an act of Pleroma. Jesus was not pretending the pain wasn't coming. He was not performing optimism. He was doing something far more precise. He was operating from a level of reality in which what was coming could not diminish what already was. That is Pleroma in practice. Not the absence of difficulty, the presence of a fullness that difficulty cannot hollow out. Look at John chapter 11, the resurrection of Lazarus. Before Jesus speaks, before he commands, before the miracle happens, he says something to his Father that most people read past entirely. "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me." Always. Present continuous. Not, "I hope you hear me." Not, "I believe you will hear me if conditions are right." Always. That sentence is the sound of a consciousness rooted in Pleroma, a consciousness that does not approach the divine as a petitioner approaching, a throne uncertain of the reception, dependent on the mood of the king, but as a son who knows, without needing to check, that the connection is permanent. That quality of knowing that unshakable always is available to you. It is not a gift reserved for Jesus. He demonstrated it precisely because it was meant to be demonstrated, meant to be seen, meant to be lived. The Pleroma does not have favorites. It is what? It is complete, undivided, available, and every fragment that remembers its origin steps immediately back into the fullness. 3 fields of serious science have arrived, independently, at conclusions that map directly onto what Jesus and the Gnostic tradition described as The first is neuroscience, specifically the research around what is called the default mode network. This is the network of brain regions that activates when the mind is at rest but not focused. And what researchers discovered is that the default mode network, when chronically overactive, is the neurological signature of the Pleroma state. Rumination, self-referential anxiety, the constant background noise of not enough, dash not dash done dash not dash there dash yet. The state of Pleroma of deep presence, of fullness without grasping, corresponds to a measurable quieting of the default mode network. The brain, in that state, is not less active. It is more coherently active, more fully present to what is, rather than churning through what might be or should have been. The second field is quantum physics, specifically the concept of the quantum vacuum, also called the zero-point field. Classical physics described empty space as truly empty. Quantum physics discovered otherwise. At the most fundamental level of physical reality, what appears to be empty space is saturated with energy, with potential, with possibility, with the raw material of what can become. The Kanama, the emptiness, is, at the deepest level, an illusion. The Pleroma is, physically, the truer description of what reality actually is. The third field is epigenetics, the work of researchers like Bruce Lipton, who demonstrated that the emotional environment of a cell determines which genetic instructions that cell follows. A body operating in the frequency of scarcity, lack, and chronic not enough activates a specific genetic profile, one oriented toward defense, contraction, survival. A body operating in the frequency of sufficiency, presence, and Pleroma activates a different profile entirely, one oriented toward growth, repair, and expansion. Jesus did not have the vocabulary of neuroscience but he had something more direct. He had direct knowing, and what he knew, and demonstrated, and transmitted, is precisely what these fields are now, 2,000 years later, beginning to measure. The Pleroma is not a spiritual concept borrowed from ancient philosophy. It is the most accurate description of what reality actually is. At the quantum level, at the neurological level, at the cellular level, you are not trying to reach something that is far away. You are trying to remember something that is closer than your own breath. Before we close, I want to give you something that few people have received. Not a concept, not another layer of teaching to carry in your mind. Something practical, something you can use tonight, before you sleep, and tomorrow morning before the day begins its noise. Protocolo, the Aramaic word. At the center of this practice is SHLEM. It is the root of shalom, but shalom, as most people know it, has been translated into something softer than it actually is. Peace, we say. And Peace is fine, but SHLEM means something more structural than peace. SHLEM means wholeness that is already complete. Integrity in the original sense, the state of something that has all its parts, that lacks nothing, that does not need to be added to in order to be what it is. When Jesus spoke shalom, when he said it to the disciples in the upper room after the resurrection, when he offered it as greeting and as blessing, he was not wishing them a pleasant emotional state. He was reminding them of what they were. Shlam, already whole, already full. Pleroma in human form. Here is how to use this word as a practice. Choose a moment each morning, before the phone, before the news, before the first demand of the day arrives. Sit with both feet on the floor. Take 3 breaths, slow enough to feel your chest and your belly both expand. Then speak shlam out loud. Not quietly, with your full voice, but without forcing. Let the sound fill the space around you. The SH is a sound of settling like breath itself. The LEM is a sound of landing, of arriving somewhere that was always here. Speak it 3 times, and between each repetition, pause long enough to feel, not think, feel whether something in your body responds. A slight releasing in the chest, a settling in the stomach, a quality of presence that was not quite there a moment before. When the doubt comes, and it will come, because the kanama is persistent, do not argue with it. Simply return to SHLEM. One word, out loud or internally, as many times as necessary. Use it also in the moments when the old frequency tries to reassert itself, when the voice says you are behind, you are lacking. It is still that it will never be enough. Speak shlum directly into that voice. Not as a weapon against it, as a reminder that the voice is kanama speaking, and that beneath the voice, the pleroma is unchanged. At night, before sleep, which is the moment your nervous system is most receptive to new transmissions, speak SHLEM once more. And then do not reach for anything. Do not visualize do, not plen. Simply let the word be the last frequency your body receives before it goes into the deep work of consolidation and repair. The effect, according to the teaching of Jesus, and now according to the neuroscience that has caught up with him, is cumulative. Each repetition lays down a layer. Each layer makes the next one easier. Each morning you return. You return to something slightly more familiar, slightly more yours, until one day, and you will not be able to say exactly when it happened, the pleroma stops being something you practice and becomes something you simply are. Did you feel something shift today? Did these words touch something deeper in you? If they did, leave the word awakening in the comments. That is your confirmation that the light within you is moving. And when the light moves, it needs a path. Discover our complete collection of 5 sacred study guides created to carry your transformation beyond this moment. The link is pinned in the comments. Your next step is waiting. Right now, before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation.